And you being at GSD Supply and 80% frames, you've got a big gripe that's been you got to fight because you've started Gideon Optics because of this fight. Go ahead and let's jump into that.
Yeah. So we were involved in the Vanderstock case for the frame and receiver rule that essentially shut down the entire 80% side of the business. So that's made its way to the Supreme Court. We actually went in October 8th of 2024 was the hearing, oral arguments. So I got to take my family down to that. That was pretty cool. Defense Distributed was there. Blackhawk Manufacturing, which is 80% arms, they were there. And so we got to sit and listen to our case at oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court. So that was cool by itself. But so I think we're going to win that one. It'll probably be like a 5-4 in our favor, but we won't know probably until like May or June, I think, of 2025. But that's a huge one. And really, the entire industry needs to be concerned about those style of rule changes because it affects everybody, whether they believe it or it does or doesn't. The way they're worded, it's going to affect every single manufacturer from, Sig Sauer, Ruger, Smith & Wesson, all the way down to guys that are only making, 100 rifles a year or something. So we need to make sure that the ATF is held in check from the balance of power that they have and what they've been doing. So, Congress has very clearly described what firearms are, and then we peel it away as we go a little bit here and there. So it's totally changed the landscape of what a firearm is, and I think we're going to bring that back to reality.
Yeah, I think that's you brought up a good point, and I think that's our biggest issue as an industry or as a community as a whole is, hey, this doesn't affect me now kind of mentality when it comes to things. We got the frame and receiver issue and that, bigger companies, oh, well, I don't do 80% frames or I don't do this. But we saw the same issue with the bump stocks. And it was like, bump stocks, it's everybody thinks,
right.
I'm going to say it now, a good chunk of us think they're the dumbest thing to ever be invented, but everybody should have the right to own it. Well, when the bump stock ban came down, everybody was like,
Right.
Well, then they went over after the FRT triggers and this, and it's going to be the same thing that's going to go with this Vanderstock case. That if they go and they go, okay, well, how does that affect? I'm going to break the fourth wall for people out there. Not a lot of people do their own forgings,
right?
So, like, how's that going to affect a Sig, a Ruger, a Smith and Wesson who have to buy forgings from the one of 6 or 7 forge houses that are out there? And that's an 80% forging that
Basically.
shows up at their house, not their house, their warehouse to go into the machining process, or it's or even like a Faxon or the smaller companies. It's a ripple effect. How do we get those the companies that don't think they're affected to actually get on board with this?
Yeah. So before this rule went into effect, there was a comment period. And so we got everybody that we knew on the 80% side involved. We drafted letters and kind of like a industry letter we sent out. And Sig Sauer actually stepped up and I think they did their own, but they realized that the way that they're, even the P365 or the P320, how it's a modular system, the way this rule was written, the grip module, which is not a firearm, the way it sits on a P320 or P365, that would have been considered a firearm. Now the ATF's going to tell you, that's not the way we intended this to be. It's not going to affect you, but it's going to, because it always does. They don't write these rules narrow. It's very broad, and and it's for every 3-lettered agency. It's not just the ATF, the EPA, everybody else. So SIG saw that was what was coming down the road, and so they got involved, which I got to give kudos to them, because they're the only mainstream business that gun manufacturer that got involved, as far as I know. So it does affect everybody. It will affect everybody. The forgings for AR-15s, like you said, those are going to be thousands. Where you could ship a pallet of it from the forging house to the manufacturer, and it's just a part. Well, now the forging is going to have a manufacturer's license. They're going to have to serialize everything, and what happens if one literally falls off the truck in shipping or something? Now you have a missing firearm that's not really a firearm; it's a chunk of metal. But now you got to go through that process, and it's just a whole spider web of mess.
Well, and not only that, but then you got to think on top of that, how much more money it's going to cost for those forgings, because now they have to go and individually serialize. Okay, well now when it gets to the manufacturer, do they run with the same serial number, or do they have to go do a new serial number because it's their thing, or does everybody have to send out their variants beforehand? Right. It's a waterfall that a lot of people don't. You don't think of the small things. You're like, oh, it doesn't affect me. I don't make 80%.
Right.
Or I don't sell 80%ers, but it's going to change so much.
Yeah, totally would change the landscape of the firearms industry, which is what they want.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but.
Well, and it's a lot of things. We saw it with, we saw it with hunters. We see it with everything. It's like, well, that doesn't affect me now.
Right.
It's not going after, they're going after AR-15s. Well, I've used the same 30-30 Winchester that my daddy gave me, and it was his daddy's. And,
right.
But I think that was a great, to jump back real quick to the grassroots thing. Like that was a great thing that we did during the election period. We got a lot of those. The claim is 10 million gun owners are unregistered voters. Mm. We're seeing this shift, this culture shift in gun owners actually getting out and voting. And I really have to attest to that they're now seeing like, oh, this actually is going to affect me. Oh, this is something. What do you mean? I did a class a couple weeks ago or a few months ago at this point with Carrie Stallone, and we're sitting there, and Carrie runs the organization We the Female. We're sitting there, and in this class, there's liberal gun owners, and to watch them as we actually start fact checking them. Well, Australia did a gun ban. Well, actually, Australia did do a gun ban. It was more of a buyback, but violent crime didn't drop. Well, of course, their whole thing was gun violence dropped. Yeah, but everything else went through the roof.
Right. It's just replaced by something.
It's just replaced by something. Criminals are going to do criminal things.
That's right.
There's nothing you can say about that. That's what they do.
Yeah. Now there's stabbing attacks in the UK and places like that.
Well, Australia had last year 2 or 3 mass stabbings.
How do you even say that? Just saying that out loud sounds crazy.
It sounds crazy.
Yeah.
Well, when I think it's the thing that comes to my mind when I hear mass stabbing is like some dude with a samurai sword running around.
Yeah.
Like from a ninja movie.
Right.
Like it just doesn't sound right.
No. Yeah. Right.
But it's the same thing. When you start saying the facts, or if you start telling them, like even people who say it doesn't affect them or it doesn't affect me at this point in time, well, it's a slippery slope. Right. Because once you take, hey, they came. The saying is, oh, they came for my AR-15s, and I said nothing. And then they came for the wood semi. Then they came for semi-automatics, and I said nothing. And then all of a sudden they came for bolt guns, and I said nothing because it doesn't affect me. And then they came for shotguns, and then I was like, oh,
right.
And it's just
now it's too late.
It's too late.